reading, or at least the first part of the weekend's reading. The quote I like today is, trust yourself, you know more than you think you do. Trust yourself, you know more than you think you do. And that was Benjamin Spock. I guess not to be confused with Star Trek Spock. Today's reading is, it can be on the nose, if you know what I mean. It can be direct, really direct. And I've done a little bit of research on this, and I'm going to make some comments on it afterwards. The general principle is fine, but there are some nuances that we need to take care of. Why? Well, you'll see shortly. You control your conditions. The first quote is from Neville Goddard, who was a brilliant person in explaining how our emotions actually are the driving force behind what happens to us in the belief, thought plus feeling realm. Consciousness is the creative cause of conditions. And by consciousness, he's talking about our consciousness in this sense. Consciousness combined with the universal subjective. And Ernest Holmes said, we believe in the control of conditions through the power of this mind. And that's in what we believe again, which, of course, is what we've been talking about all month. And this is Reverend John Waterhouse. And far be it from me to deviate from something who's been in religious science a lot longer than I have, but I do have a couple of comments, and I did a little bit of research on this, as I said. So, having the power to control conditions is where many people draw the line in studying the philosophy of Ernest Holmes. But this is not a fringe concept. Writings by Stoics, i.e. Plotinus, mystics, philosophers, psychologists, and every school of metaphysics for 2 millennia, and I would say more, demonstrate that we have this ability. The circumstances of our lives are not arbitrary. They come to us because there's something in our consciousness that creative mind uses to attract those circumstances. So we already and always control the conditions of our lives. I'm going to come back to this, by the way. It is when we take conscious charge of what we think, say, believe, and feel that conditions improve. Absolutely. 100%. Absolutely. This is why it is so important to not seek a cause for any condition outside of ourselves, even when we feel justified in blaming someone or something else for doing this to us. Why? Because we can stop at any moment in time and we can change the way that we think and feel about something. They could not change our condition without something within us allowing it to happen. True. Blaming yourself doesn't help either. True. You know that if it came from your consciousness, you have the absolute authority to redirect creative mind, spirit, universal subjective, you call it what you want, toward manifesting something different, something better. So, first of all, people in New Thought in general have looked at somebody who's got stuff going on in their lives that isn't of a positive nature, shall we say, and pointed a finger at them and said, hey, it's entirely your own fault that you're in this mess, you know? It's what you've been thinking and feeling. No, you never do that. That is just, it's just malpractice. You do not do that. Now, to the more important question, is every single thing in our life the result of our own conscious feeling and thinking? And I would say it's complicated. Why is it complicated? Because you are not, and I am not, totally alone in our consciousness. We're interconnected with everything that exists throughout the universe, the metaverse, the multiverse, the omniverse, whatever you want to call it. Everything is interconnected. And because everything's interconnected, then it becomes more complicated than saying that every single thing that we've experienced in our life is our own fault. I mean, you cannot say that for a baby that's just been born, that's got issues. You could argue that it's the way that one of the parents or both of the parents were thinking and feeling that produced this. But you could also argue that it's a result of how the human race has been thinking and feeling. It's how everything on the planet's been thinking and feeling. So to me, it's way more complicated than just saying you are totally responsible for every single thing that has ever happened in your life, good, bad, or indifferent. No, it's complicated because we are joined together. I think a quote that I found from, and I asked AI to help me find the quote so I got it correctly. Life is like a mirror and will reflect back to the thinker what the thinker thinks into it. So in other words, it will reflect back to us what we're thinking. And a little bit more research would suggest that Ernest Holmes, he didn't literally say that every single thing that happens in your life is the result of yours. He generally spoke of creating or attracting conditions through consciousness, rather than claiming that every circumstance is under our personal control. I mean, Ernest Holmes knew and taught that we're all interconnected. And let's face it, if we're all interconnected, then everything has an influence on the whole. So you're not thinking in a vacuum. You are thinking into a universal consciousness that has got other people thinking and feeling into this, and they impact each other. So are we impacting what happens in our lives by the way that we think and feel? Absolutely. Can we direct that to positive outcomes? Absolutely. Can we subconsciously or even consciously direct it towards negative outcomes? Absolutely. But to say that we are totally responsible for every single thing that's ever happened in our life up to now, I think is not correct. It is true that we do create our own circumstances through our consciousness, but remembering we're doing it not in a vacuum, we're doing it in direct connection with who knows how many billions or trillions of other minds that are out there thinking and feeling, to which we're all interconnected. So some distant star system that is trillions of light years away, we are interconnected with any beings on that. Why? Because the whole universe is interconnected, and at a speed and a way that's much faster than light. So anyway, that is my opinion. And if you study like on the fringe of quantum physics, you'll see that everything is interconnected at every level. So that is my offering for you for today. And I leave it up to you to come to your own conclusion, but I don't think that we are personally responsible for every single thing that's happened in our lives. But I do believe that we do have the power to change what happens in our lives by the power of our thoughts and feelings, negative and positive. So there you are. So something is not going well now. Yes, you can absolutely change it by the way you think and feel, and by the way you actually think and feel about other people. Because remember this, that at the end of the day, you have the power to choose how you think and feel about somebody. And if you are steaming and fuming for hours, days, weeks, months about somebody because of what they did to you, the only person that you're hurting is really you. At the end of the day, you are going to suffer more than anybody else from that. Will you impact the other person by that? Potentially, but the biggest person you'll impact is yourself. So let's flip it around and say, when we think good thoughts about ourselves and other people and circumstances, yes, we absolutely have the power to change that because of the way we think and feel. My life is brilliantly wonderful every day. Yes, it is a very good affirmation, but at the end of the day, it comes down to this. Do you believe that? I mean, do you really believe that by reaffirming that at frequent intervals. My life is brilliantly wonderful every day. Do you really believe that? And if you do, then your life's going to change for the better. If it's lukewarm, then you'll have some effect, but it will be lukewarm. And if you really don't believe it, then don't expect anything to happen. So those are my thoughts for today. And I want to end on a positive note. Yes, you absolutely can change what happens in your life by the power of your word and your feeling. In other words, your belief. And I'm knowing that each and every person here is applying that in their life to impact for the good their own life and the lives of all those around them. And I release this word into a divine law that always says yes, and so it is. And remember, tomorrow, 2 things. 11 a.m. is the Creative Life Spiritual Center service with the talk by Reverend Dr. Jesse Jennings. And then before that at 9:15 is going to be Reverend Whistle Ryan talking. And then I'll be back, hopefully around about 5 p.m. So until next